Hi, I'm Kelly.
I'm Rich.
And we are Wonderbus Adventures. Today we are
securing our batteries and lighting our box with some LED light strip,
wiring our 230 volt consumer unit and our 12 volt master cutoff switch,
and installing and testing our battery protect, Lynx, Shunt and inverter.
Hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to drop us a comment below.
First thing I'm doing today is moving this box back out into the garage because father-in-law pointed out that our house is starting to look like sort of the old school motorbike owner who would dismantle their motorbike and leave it on the kitchen table.
Heavy. Oh, it's neat.
So now we can get on with mounting a neat switch to go on the end to basically power all of the lights in the garage. So I'm going to put that in on the end of where all of our other switches were. Got a space for it. I bought one with a little LED in it because it's going to be under the bed. Obviously we want to be able to see where it is so we can switch the garage lights off and on. Same process as before with these CBE switches. I'm a big fan of these actually. So first of all, you just mask up the area, draw on where you want it to be, make sure it's all centered, drill through with a 51 to 54 millimeter hole saw, mount up the plate, and then I just need to put this wire to the back of my fuse box, which is, I have bit the bullet and bought some of these heat shrink terminals. So I'm going to give those a go today, see if they're any good, because I've been hearing good things about them. The first thing I need to do is just get a short length of 2-core wire in, match it to the Bluetooth, crimped, see how it heat shrinks. Oh, they look neat, glued and everything.
What's going on then?
I've been wiring up the end socket so it's in now. I just wanted to check that it all worked. And so you'll remember that we've got fans in here, cooling fans. We've got a cable here for the diesel heater, which is fused. And we've got a 12 volt on the end. So what I've done is I've just jerry rigged some spades on the end.
Yeah.
And I'm going to pop them in my 12 volt battery. Remember, this runs to the fuse box on the end, so it's safe to do this. Right, okay, so let's see if it works. Negative in. Positive in. Right, the fans are working. I can hear them. Let's see if everything else works. So at the moment, this is the cable that comes out for the lights. It shouldn't work at the moment. No. If you flick that switch down there, the LED should come on.
Yeah.
And then this works too.
Cool. Should I send that back off?
Yeah. And then stuff that's in behind here that should now work. This cable for the diesel heater should now work.
Yeah.
Does. And
sorry, it's very small space here, guys.
the 12 volt auto socket should also work.
Yay!
So it all works, which is good. Just a little test, because before we push this in, I wanted to know it all worked. Now that we've tested that all that works, I need to take the lid off of this. So if you remember, this is basically secured in with some machine screws in here, because what I'm going to do is fit some braces across the top for the batteries all the way along, and then on the front here I'm going to have a bracing piece of wood across the front. So basically the batteries will be boxed in and secure, so they can't move horizontally or vertically in here, and then this will all eventually be secured through the floor. And then because this is braced in between the box, there's a very heavy duty angle I'm going to show you now. They won't be going anywhere. This is like a heavy duty reinforcement plate. You kind of usually see it in the building industry holding up timbers and things like that. What I'm going to use it for is to stop vertical movement in the batteries. I'm going to use 2 of these, so I'm going to cut them to length, and they're going to, on this end at the very least, sit underneath this batten, and on the other end I'm going to cut it down and then put some nuts and bolts through on this end to hold it in place, so I can take it in and out if I need to move the batteries. And 2 of these will be more than enough, especially once this has been screwed down through into the floor. Let me show you. Seeing is believing and all of that. Underneath there and there. And what we'll have is one, and where's the other one? It's going to be bolted through here, through the end in here. Try and make use of those actually. I'm going to try and get some hook bolts that will go through and then be attached here on their nut. And then that way I'm going to hang something off the end of here to be revealed. I'm going to drill some holes with some pocket screws in behind here so I can screw the whole thing through into the floor. And then we're going to have brackets on here, brackets here, and the brackets on the wall to attach this to the bus. All being well, it won't go anywhere. Seems to have got a lot colder out here in the last hour or so. A couple of last bits to do before we pop it in. I'm going to run LED strip lighting underneath here. Bought some nice 17mm profile and some continuous LED light strip. All under here. I'm going to wire that into the back. Remember, it's on the switch down the side. And then there's going to be a little bit of wire that comes out to run to the other side of the garage as well, just so we've got full lighting in there. The profile was cut, the LED strip was glued in, and then I crimped up to the wire that I ran earlier. This is on here now. Here is the parallel connection up to this. This will go under the bed eventually, but I just wanted to test that it will work. So hopefully, 3, 2, 1, it works. Good show. And then the parallel connection works too. The wiring for that just goes in neatly out through the back, through this grommet, and then this will light the left hand side of the garage. And as mentioned, this will light the rest of it. I wanted the cables come up through. This will actually come up under the bed nice and neatly, so you won't even see it. It's a very exciting day. So batteries are in the bus, the box is in the bus. I need to sort all these cables out because they're going to pull all through here. I bought this earth heat shrink just so, well, it looks nice and you can see which one the AC earth is. I pulled that through the front to where it's going to attach to the Multiplus compact. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just slightly extend this here so I can better run it through the cabinet up there. So I bought a joiner and a genuine Jubilee. Well, David bought me some genuine Jubilee clips. Thanks, David. From local fasteners. A lot of these cables here, believe it or not, are sensor cables and level cables. Remember in a previous video, Kelly made this insulation, which will now hopefully pull over to shield this. I'm going to put a couple of zip ties around this to keep it in place. Just got hold of some of my spare conduit that I'm knocking about, and I've made it into some split conduit so I can run it around these cables that are going to pull up in behind the box. Obviously these are going to be a lot shorter, but I'm going to have an element of slack there just in case I need to remove the box in the future. I want to keep that to a minimum, so there's no chafing, and any chafing that we might have I want to cut down by putting it in this conduit. So I'm just going to wrap it around now, pop some zip ties on there, and then we should be ready to push this on in. Right, so that's run now, and then the cable I've got coming up here, I've just got wrapped in some loom wrap, and then that's going to pass through up into the conduit that runs through the cupboard, just to keep that from getting chafed. There's going to be very little movement in here anyway. I think the slack that we'll have will be a matter of inches, but it is required for my setup. Alrighty, ignoring the wires that I need to do, obviously, I'm going to focus on getting it secured in the bus and then getting the battery secured next, because I want this mounted securely. So I've already got these brackets in, I've got the pocket holes there, and it's going to be mounted to the unit. Ignore the nested wires, that'll be sorted next. So this hole here corresponds with this brace and so on and so forth. I'm just going to fit up some of these little deck hooks. So fair warning, they said M6, they weren't, so I've drilled through the top to take the M6 bolt that I need to mount, and I've left the bottom just countersunk. I'm going to put a screw in there. That way, when I take the brace in and out, I don't need to take the hook off. And yeah, I just thought make use of the hole, because why not? So let's pop those on. Before and after. It's little tips like that keep me awake at night, but make me happy, and this is why the build takes so long. But gonna hang some stuff on there, obviously. Maybe like the hookup lead for our shore power, or the polarity checker or something like that, can go on the end of there. And we've made use of the space. A couple more screws to put through now the floor, so in those brackets there, gonna go through the floor, some nice long screws. And I'm gonna get some angle brackets, secure it to the wall along the top, and then we're ready to crack on with actually wiring the thing up. But you know, want to make sure it's not going to go anywhere, right? One step at a time. Today's mission is to get the consumer unit wired up with everything we need apart from the shore power in external line, because that's going to be in the near future. Get the battery bank wired up and get that wired to the Lynx. And if we've got all of that sorted today, we should have basically a working power plant, and then all of the charge sources will be next. So that's the aim for today. First up, I need to get out my Vario crimper, my cable strippers, and my big 25mm lug and crimpers for the AC earth. This cable here I ran a few weeks ago, and it is our AC earth point for our Multiplus. So this basically bonds to the case in underneath via a lug, which I'm going to attach in a minute, and provides an earth bond for the AC side of the system, because the Multiplus, the 230 volt and the 12 volt sides don't mix for obvious reasons. So you need a separate AC earth in the event anything would go wrong, and then everything that's run on the 12 volt side will be grounded at a central point through the Lynx. So the first thing we're going to do, you see I put the earth sheath on here. I'm going to strip that back, crimp this up and put that on, and then I'm going to wire up the consumer unit. I'm not going to cover that in too much detail because, as I mentioned before, I'm not a qualified professional in this. So do your own research, but that's what I'm going to do now. Everything was wired in place. Double check that it was all right and tight before putting the lids back on. Someone did ask with the RCBO what happens to the earth. So the earth actually should follow from the point of entry to the vehicle, so from your hookup all the way to the Multiplus. So there's a number of ways you could do that, I've been told. You could send to strip it, which I haven't done because I haven't got the correct tool, or you can just join the earth, and that way you have a continuous earth from your hookup point to the Multiplus, and then if there's a fault you have an earth straight literally back into the ground, because your source will be earth, or should be earth, at your hookup or your house. Okay, so the next job, I need to wire my battery bank. Now thankfully a few weeks ago I took the time to make these cables up. So I'm using 70mm squared cable for my battery bank, for the wiring that's going to go to my cut-off, and for my earth cable as well, so it's all matching. Now, to go over quickly how this works, these M8 bolts come with the batteries. And essentially, what we will have is all of the positive cables running this way along. Obviously I'm going to tidy all of this up. That's one of the next jobs. Along here, and I'm going to come up through my lid and go out through that hole, and then in there we're going to have a cut-off switch, and all of the negative cables are going to run the opposite direction along. Then we have a long negative cable coming out here, coming up to the Lynx. I'm going to wire this up first, and then we're going to see how long that negative cable is, and we're going to try our very best to make that cable that comes up here and goes to the switch and then comes back round to it to be the same length as it, including the switch and everything that's in between, and the fuse of course. On this bit here, I need to bring up my 70mm cable, and obviously I'm not going to get that around that bend. So what I've done is I bought an angled lug. So you can buy these or you could bend them in a vise, but I've decided to buy some. So one for here, and then I think I'm going to need to use them on my battery cut-off too. I'm just going to crimp that onto the end of some 70mm cable. At this stage it also makes sense to attach the thermostat from the Multiplus, which I've attached, and the positive feed from that needs to go to the shunt. So the shunt, I'm running it straight off the battery so we know what's in the battery at all times. Now the thermostat, whatever it is, cable was really long, so I've just cut the cable and I'm using butt splices to shorten them. The next thing I'm going to fit is a mega fuse, which I've got a mega fuse holder for inside, and this breaker. So this breaker is rated up to 300 amps, more than enough for our system. It can be mounted in a few different ways. Now before I can do this, I need to drill through those holes there, which you can see me up in the top corner doing now, and then I'm going to run my power cable through the lid up and out. Then we can see how this is going to be mounted. So I need to drill a smaller hole this side and a bigger hole out the other side, and this is going to sit within it. And we need to have a little figure out where we're going to put the mega fuse as well. So we'll have a look at that first. This little switch, let me tell you, has given me quite a lot to think about. I swear I overthink this stuff. Anyway, I want to maintain that I want this inside the van, so I can isolate the electrics inside the van when I'm shut down, or if something goes wrong and I need to shut everything down at source. So what I've done is I've drilled a hole out to panel mount this inside our wardrobe area, and then I was going to put the fuse in this wardrobe area as well, but for a number of reasons I'm not going to do that. It would just mean running extra cable that I don't need to run, and it will look untidy as well. Later on we're going to have a black cut-off switch as well in here for our DC stuff. So let's say we want everything to remain on, like the 230 volt and all of the other stuff, but we wanted to just switch off the DC stuff. I can switch all of that off, and that way, for example's sake, the solar could keep running and charging the batteries and all of that good stuff. At this point I mounted the mega fuse on the end board with the lugs pointing down, so I'm going to need to cut the lid for that to accommodate, and then I ran and secured the negative cable before measuring it so I could try and match the positive cable length to it. Okay, join me in my garage. I am fitting the wires for the bluesea switch. So the bluesea switch is going to go obviously into the wall. On the back you've got input and output. So input will be from the battery, output will come out to my Lynx. What I'm going to do is use these angled lugs, so they'll fit onto the back here. If you have a look, these are 8mm M8 holes. I need to drill those out. If you're going to be using them for this purpose, obviously get the ones that are 70mm for your cable, or whatever size your cable is, and the 10mm holes for going here. I'm going to drill them out. If I drill it slowly, it'll be fine. I want to get this cable run to include the switch and the fuse to be as close to as I can the same length as the negative cable coming from the battery bank. Measure the negative cable, that's 55 centimeters. I've measured the piece of cable that is running from the battery bank positive side up to the fuse, and that's 15. So that tells me that these two pieces of cable here in total need to be 20 centimeters or there or thereabouts. Take it, because obviously I can take into account that holding the switch in there. So that's what I'm going to cut them to, and then I've got them as close as I physically can to being equal. I used the device to good effect here. Someone left a tip, I think it was Thomas and Stephen, a few weeks ago, saying put it in the vice, Rich, and I did, and to be fair, it made it much more useful, even with my cheap tool that I bought off eBay, to get some nice neat crimps on this. And using it on the bench was a whole lot more pleasant than working in the bus. One bluesea master switch. Let's go and see if this will work. I think it's going to need a little bit of tweaking to get through those two holes I've drilled. But what I've done is, when I've crimped it, one of the lugs that comes out is kind of straight perpendicular with the other one. The other one I put it back to front because the cable is actually going to bend back on itself to go on that master fuse. So hopefully this has worked out. Let's have a look, see. Slight snafu in that the two holes were aligned with the cable perfectly. I didn't account for the fact that the lug is a bit wider, is actually hitting against the piece in the middle. So what I'm going to do is make use of the case that comes with the bluesea switch, and I drilled a hole out the back to accommodate it, and this is what it looks like. I've gone for a 300 amp mega fuse, that goes on first, then the lug, then the big washer and spring washer, and finally the nut, and then you torque it up to spec. What that does mean is if you have to replace it, you have to take it all off. But there we are. Okay, showing my work. From the battery, this positive cable comes up to the mega fuse, through the mega fuse, down to the switch, which is in here. From the switch, it passes back through the wall, comes out here into the Lynx, and all of that there, believe it or not, is 55 centimeters or thereabouts, if you include the fuse and the switch, which you should. So it matches there or thereabouts. It's not exact, I must admit, but it's there or thereabouts the negative feed in. Was it complicated to do it that way? Absolutely. Is it worth it? I am not sure. A lot of effort has gone into that to basically allow me to switch it off in the cupboard. I have had to do that little fudge so it's not inset in the side of the cupboard, which isn't the end of the world, because it's in the cupboard, so really who cares? You know, we're going to lose a little bit of space, but you know, a top will go around that, or your trousers will go around that, because we're just going to be hanging clothes in there anyway. And we are going to put trunk anyway from this point along. As I'm here, I'm going to shorten the cable for the smart shunt. So that is connected to the positive side of my battery. The smart shunt itself is connected to the Lynx and then to the negative side of the battery bank. I've cut this shorter and I'm just going to put another ferrule on it. Victron Connect app, which we're having a look at here, allows you to basically configure most of the smart things that Victron offer. Here we're having a look at the shunt, and you can see how it's set up. So basically it finds it, you go on in, you update it, and then you set it up, and it's kind of that straightforward really. The more complicated the product, the more setting up that's required, and we'll go into that a little bit, but not in too much detail, because I know that not everyone will find that interesting, but I did. This is the battery protect. So this is the in, this running from my Lynx. There's no fuse on it at the moment, as you can see, and this is out. So this runs to both of my fuse boxes, so the small one on the back and the big one that's going inside. This bit here needs to go to earth, so I'm just going to heat shrink that up, and earth that to body. And you've got a couple of other things on here that you could use that I'm not going to use. So it's got like outputs for alarms or relays, and the little green thing next to it with the wire bridge in it, that's for a remote on off. And again, I'm not going to be using that. I can switch it on and off via the app is the idea. The trunking that I'm using comes with this neat lid, obviously to hide all the cables. But on the end where I've got my positive and negative cables coming into the Lynx, I'm having to actually improvise a bit. So I'm going to drill a hole out the front here. I've measured so it just looks as even as it can be, and hopefully that's going to work out. And then we've got a little trick to Victron it up even more. World's first, I feel. Victron orange, baby, which I'm happy with. So just going to hook up a couple of bits for the Multiplus, and then we can give it a little test run. The Multiplus was largely set up in our last video. So the last thing to do here was to attach the 35mm cable via a 200 amp mega fuse. Alright, so I've attached the positive and negative terminals for the Multiplus now, running through a 200 amp mega fuse. They're all torqued up, that runs down to the Multiplus. That is ready to switch on. I've not switched on any of the AC loads yet for obvious reasons, so this will allow me to switch the Multiplus on and configure it before we do that. So I'm just going to go and get the switch, because we've got a switch to mount up in the cupboard, because that's part of the setup process as well. You need to enable that to make that work, otherwise you have to switch it off and on at the case, which obviously is not ideal because that's going to be in the garage. And I'm just going to plug in as well, although we're going to have to extend these cables, the Touch 50. And there's Kelly.
Hi.
It's taken us so long to install this. There's now a Touch 70, which is bigger, but this still looks cool. Okay, Kelly's joined us for the most important part. I've installed basically all of the load sort of sources. The Lynx is in, battery protector's in, the Shunt is in, and the inverter is in, and the consumer unit is in. So we're actually now ready to test some stuff out and see if it works. I've wired in a temporary extension lead socket to one of the front ones, and we're just going to switch on that circuit for now and test to see if it works. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is switch on the master power.
We're going to do it. Okay, it's on.
And everything will begin powering up now. Everything is dead at the moment. You can see little twinkling lights beginning to switch on.
And Cerbo and whatnot.
So on our inverter, you can either switch it on here, or we've actually got the remote switch. So it is on here at the moment, but it's not on because it's configured to work on this switch. Okay, so now it's on, and you can see the inverter is on. And then if we check our control panel, it should say on there that it's inverting to. Does it?
Yeah, it's now inverting.
Okay, so we've got that on there, and then it says 0 watts on there because we're not actually putting any loads through it at the moment. You can see that.
If I put my phone on charge.
I've wired an extension lead socket on the end here, purpose made for the job, and we've got the charger in there. So if you plug that in,
There you go.
is it charging?
Yeah.
Brilliant. And if we look on the control panel, 5 watts that is taking, and this one here we've actually got 2 sockets wired in, if you remember. We've got one wired into this here, so I'm just going to plug in my DeWalt charger, and voila, it's charging, and it shows that now 74 watts of power through the inverter. Yay, it works.
Big milestone.
Yeah, very big. Lots of work gone into this. So that's all in now. Obviously, we've got no charge sources yet. We've still got our MPPT, our battery to battery, and shore power in to fit. I'm going to rope Kelly in to actually help him with that.
I hope to see you next time, guys. Take care. 1, 2, 3.
Bye.